knowing that he was from Scripps and I was at the time in Tustin and Ranch, I just said, it's so sweet what you said. I just want to let you know, but you're a little too far. So good luck with you, and hope everything goes well with you.
And I said, well, that's a long ways to go to get a pizza, but not for the man of your dreams. And that was it. She was wrapped.
Welcome to Couples Unfiltered, a podcast where we talk about love, loss, relationships, and the journey. I'm Lionel Salisbury.
I'm Natalie Galley-Salisbury. We must first start by saying that we're not licensed therapists, and anything we discuss here is solely based on our life experiences and our, the way we see things. So I have to say that every time.
Today we're talking to an amazing couple who had a lot of life in front of them before they got married and experienced a lot of life after they got married. So we want you to all welcome to Couples Unfiltered, Mark and Heather.
Thank you.
Welcome. We're super excited to have you here, and we are really ready to dive in and talk about your story. So Mark, let's start with you. Tell us where you're from and give us a brief understanding of who you are and what got you here today.
Well, I'm a redneck Italian living in California, so I'm all messed up. No, I'm born in the country in West Monroe, Louisiana, kind of the northern center of Louisiana, and small town for the most part, and born and raised there, really didn't leave there much. And started an insurance agency there and had a little success, greatest clients in the world. And I was actually recruited to come out here to California to manage mostly Southern California, but it then extended to the rest of the state. So I manage for one of the oldest and largest insurance companies in insurance, and we do pretty much all lines. So been here for 16 years and met my wife, my girlfriend
10 years
at the time.
ago.
10 years ago.
So I bet growing up in Monroe was that's not quite a Bible Belt, but you.
Oh, it is. Yeah, it's pretty much smack dab.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
So you grew up were raised going to church and.
Interesting question. Yeah, my grandfather on my mother's side was a Baptist preacher. And my, of course, Italian side of the family are known for being Catholic. Right. So I called myself Baptist or Catholic, depending on, depending on which weekend it was. So every weekend, so it was quite the shock, weekend after next. But it was that was the upbringing I had.
Yeah.
Wow. And so Heather, have you always lived in California?
I'm a California native, Southern California, and I love it. I have been all over the southern coast. Been in San Diego off and on for about 20 years. Work brought me to San Diego, and it's a great place to live.
Yeah, it sure is.
Now, you said work brought you to San Diego, so what do you do?
I was doing real estate at the time. I worked for a builder, sold new homes, and that's what ultimately took me to San Diego. And then this guy recruited me in the insurance business about 7 years ago. It's been a good decision, really good decision. It's a little hectic right now with everything going on in California, I'm sure you know. But
I recruited her in the relationship business 4 years before that. So
true.
Yeah. Well, we know you all have a lot of stuff that came before the two of you became, an item.
Yes.
So Heather, you have a son.
I have a 16-year-old. Yes.
Gavin.
Yeah.
Wow, they grew up fast.
Hey, they do. They do. And Mark, how about you?
I have a 20-year-old right now, and I lost a son, which would be 25 right now.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, full disclosure, I was able to work with your son
Absolutely.
at the school that we worked at, the boarding school, and that's where we got a chance to meet.
Yes.
Which is it offers a great opportunity to meet someone in that space, to know, because it's not my words coming to you of who I am or your words coming to me of who you are.
Yep.
It's from the experience of the child.
Yeah.
And he's able to kind of bridge that gap. So
Absolutely.
Very-
He looked up to you, and I hope you weren't a drill sergeant, because otherwise this won't be a good compliment. But
No.
you're one of the
He was.
one of the only friendly faces he had there. So he really looked up to you
yeah,
for a lot of reasons.
yeah, good care and concern. That's
So it was
what it
really
is.
good to know you in that way, to see how you treat kids and work with kids. So thank you for that.
We knew of you much before we actually met you.
oh
So, and it was all very positive, and we really appreciate that.
well, I love that. Love that.
Yeah.
Well, how did you guys meet?
Yeah.
How did you come together? What's the origin story?
Let's hear her story.
Well, you don't want to hear his story. We did meet online, and as a single parent, it's it's one of those things that I'm sure can resonate with many people that are single parents, that you don't want to necessarily date your friends' friends, and it's kind of a private thing for me anyway. And so I did try it, and it wasn't very successful. I'll try to keep this part of the story short, but I removed myself from the site, and I was getting ready one morning for work, and I thought, this is weeks later, and I thought, I wonder if I successfully removed myself from the site. I just wanted to make sure I was completely removed, and I logged on, and I had received these emails sent naturally because I hadn't been checking it. Mm-hmm. And in the subject line, it caught my eye enough for me to open it, and it was Mark, and said some lovely things about me. Very nice.
She said,
sweet
I'll
compliment.
pick it up from there. She said, well, that's it was an hour and 30-minute drive from Poway to Tustin?
I said something to the effect of, knowing that he was from Scripps, and I was at the time in Tustin and Ranch. Mm. I just said, it's so sweet what she said. I just want to let you know, but you're a little too far. So good luck with you, and hope everything goes well with you.
And I said, well, that's a long ways to go to get a pizza, but not for the man of your dreams. And that was it. She was wrapped. So,
Yes.
I'm proud of that moment.
She's like, well, I really like
I'm usually
pizza.
not that witty, but.
And we met that night for dinner. We had a great time. And obviously, 10, almost 11 years later, we're here and we're madly in love. And he's probably the best human I know. And I get to be married to him.
Oh, I love that.
Wonderful.
I'm very fortunate.
And you guys have a blended family.
Yes.
Mark, you have 2 sons, and you were married before.
Yes.
And you had your first son, Jon Mark, and then you had your second son, Nick.
Nick, that's right.
How far apart are they?
5 years.
Okay. And then your son Nick's mother lived in this area, so Nick lived with you part of the time.
That's right.
And Jon Mark didn't live with you.
No, when I left Louisiana for work in 2008, he was with his mother in Louisiana, so it was difficult. It was difficult. We had a lot of good times together, and we got together as often as we could, but time flies, and my intention was to get a house back home and spend a lot of time back and forth, but starting a new business out here, that became difficult. So we just got together every chance we could. We had great vacations and things like that, but it wasn't the same. So he was 8 when I left, 7 or 8-ish, I can't remember exactly, but yeah.
And at some point, we've obviously had this discussion, and at some point there was some struggling going on with behaviors and choices.
I met him when he was 14, and he was very shy, very respectful, a sweet, sweet kid that you quickly learned that he's really funny. He's just a funny kid.
Yeah.
and great student. Just, I think, from my, do you mind if I, from meeting him as a mother for the first time at 14, I remember thinking this kid is just adorable, just a sweetheart. And Mark could certainly dive into this, but the trouble started right about 16-ish in Louisiana.
Right. And how long had you been married when?
We weren't married at the time. We were dating and living together.
Okay. And you guys dated for a couple years.
We dated for 3 years before we got married. We moved in fairly quickly,
Right.
honestly. We certainly beat the odds, I think, in that scenario. But we had a quick blended family.
Right.
Yeah.
Nice.
We found that we moved in together before we got married, and that was honestly pretty helpful for us to get to understand each other a little bit better and live together before we got married, which, before growing up, I'm from a church-going family. You don't do that.
Right.
But it was nice to be able to get to that space, to be able to be together. Now, you guys are living together and you're not married yet. How do you navigate through this young man and other children as dating couples?
Well, our two younger boys, just our best friends. So that was easy. And they were with us. My son, off and on during the week, but soon after we were living together, my son Nick, my younger son, was with us just about full time. But again, him and Gavin are best friends still to this day. They're best friends. So that made it real easy for that. And Jon Mark, when he started having problems, he failed out of his senior year in high school in Louisiana. And so we found that due to the credit scoring system, he actually had enough credits to retake his senior year here. And so we met with the school and talked to him and his mom. And so he came out here to live with us. And all he had to do was show up a couple hours a day and he would have graduated high school. But the lady there at San Marcos High was, really going to work with us to get him out. They want to get seniors out of school, and so he wouldn't show up. So she said, okay, well, that didn't work, but if he'll go over here and sit on a computer for a few hours, they'll pass him, and whatever that was. And so he was just rebelling against education, and then it became problem. I don't really remember, and you may have a different take on this, but I don't really remember it being a problem between us. I know a lot of times that happens between couples. Maybe it's because we're a little older and we were a little more mature of how we handle, situations, and we stuck together on everything. Right. There wasn't anyone putting any sides on, him working the sides of that. So so he fell out of his high school here too, his senior year, sorry. And I just said, look, you got to get a job or go to school. Right. I will support you. Luckily, I was I was on my own in high school, believe it or not, working, delivering pizzas, and went into the military at 18. I was on my own my senior year in a low-income apartment with a friend of mine. So, to have a father, I was hoping that meant a lot, to say, look, I will support you whichever direction you go. And I've always wanted to do that, but he got into smoking dope pretty bad, to the point where I think it affected, his wanting to go to work and things like that. And so we just kind of hit a wall and just said, look, I'll support you as long as you're in school or you're working. Right. And working may be I help you move out because, it's time. Right. And so we kind of went through that, and he didn't like that. I think he decided that he would go back home where all of my family and his mother's family and his mother were. And that's when I think, again, I don't want to paint him, as a bad, he was
He's a typical teenager.
He's a
at that
typical
age,
teenager.
you know?
He's somewhat I mean, he just was going to do his own thing, and he
Right.
was to the age where he could say that, but he wasn't supporting himself, you
Right,
know.
right.
And so there was that conflict there, and but he was a comedian. I mean, you need to know that his number one goal, I don't care if it was to stand up and do a jig or to say something funny. I mean, I could just tell you millions of stories of just, and every video I have of him is him trying to make somebody laugh. And so, you know, it was real hard to have that tough love on him. But, you know, I knew as a father, you know, was important.
Yeah.
So,
He knew his gifts and he utilized them well.
He's a free spirit.
Yeah.
He was that kid that didn't care about materialistic stuff, although he loved shoes, you know, and he loved like, for example, when he started at San Marcos High School, he immediately made friends, not just a few, but he made a ton of friends. And he would wear cowboy boots to school. Well, who does that in Southern California? So, you know, that he just had a little bit of an edge that was different. From my perspective, I think that there was a strain on the relationship with him and his dad because of the fact that, you know, his parents got a divorce when he was young, and there was a lot of hostility, unfortunately. Even though you try not to let it come through to the child, it's virtually impossible. And so when there's hostility going on, I think it's easy to push the blame on the other.
and I left. I mean, it's something that I know you're going to ask, so I'll just go ahead and throw it out there. You know, there's a lot of regret. I mean, I try not to live with regret. I've had a lot of therapy and a lot of, you know, thoughts on forgiving myself, but, you know, leaving him at age 8 and going across the country for work. I mean, if you're in the military, you don't have a choice.
Exactly.
And there's people that do that, and they do it with the tools, and hopefully they come out successful, right?
Right.
And the only reason we're talking about this, well, maybe we have another reason to talk, but the only reason we're talking about this is because he died.
Yeah.
And that was not fair for him or for me. And now, of course, but I blame myself before that. You know, how could you leave a 7, 8-year-old with, you know, big crying eyes? And you know, so it was hard. And but I told him I was wrong every chance that he would bring it up, because that was a big problem with him, that it was wrong. And I knew it was wrong, but I made those decisions based on whatever information I felt at the time. And we make mistakes, right? And I just told him I would spend the rest of my life trying to make it up and be his best friend if he would allow me to.
Absolutely.
And one thing that I never really knew is that, did my dad love me? Did he, you know, and so I just always wanted to let him know, no matter how bad it got, that I loved him. And so, yeah.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, and I'm glad you mentioned therapy, because that's a very important thing that a lot of people don't talk about, and that a lot of us will need to seek that assistance. With that, we like to thank our sponsors, BetterHelp. You know, in life, we all face challenges, especially in our relationships. That's why we're excited to talk about the importance of understanding power dynamics in relationships today.
Now let's talk about power couples. According to Oxford Languages Dictionary, power couples are defined as a couple consisting of two people who are each influential or successful in their own right. But let's not limit this definition to just fame and fortune. Power couples also thrive on mutual respect, support, and effective communication. And that's where BetterHelp comes in.
With BetterHelp's online therapy platform, you and your partner can gain valuable insight into your relationship dynamic. Whether you're struggling to find balance, navigating conflict, or simply seeking to strengthen your bond, BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist who specializes in helping couples just like yours.
Imagine having a dedicated space where you and your partner can explore your feelings, address underlying issues, and develop healthier ways of relating to each other. BetterHelp offers convenient, confidential, and affordable therapy sessions, all accessible from the comfort of your own home.
So, if you're ready to take your relationship to the next level, consider signing up with BetterHelp today, because When you understand the characteristics of power relationships and work together to cultivate a supportive partnership, there's no limit to what you can achieve as a couple.
To learn more and take the first step towards a stronger, more fulfilling relationship, click the link in the description or visit betterhelp.com/couplesunfiltered for 10% off your first month of therapy with a licensed professional. That's betterhelp.com/couplesunfiltered. Thanks again, BetterHelp, for sponsoring this episode.
It matters, therapy. I think growing up in the South, at my age, I'm 50 plus now, depending on when you watch this. And so, that wasn't kind of the kosher thing to do, to say I'm going to get therapy. I mean, that's hard
Right.
for, I think, a man from where I'm from when at the time frame. But I just think it's acceptable now. It's more, you can say that to your best friend and he doesn't, call you names. I mean, it's more accepted. It's understood. Luckily, we've gotten to a place where I can say I have had, I hate to use the word secular, but, natural therapy in the outside, and I've had Christian therapy. And it means a lot, and it really helps. But I think one of the most important things that I've had, and, since losing him, is others that have had the same loss reaching out. And I hate for them to be in that fraternity. I hate to be in that fraternity or sorority. But man, it just, for someone to know how you feel going through that is, it helped. And I hate that it did, but it did.
Well, let's back up a little bit. Let's talk about, we're around age 14, between 14 and 17 right now. What are some of the challenges that he was facing, and what was the conversation that was going on between the two of you when it came to your son?
So there's a few incidents that happened in Louisiana that was potentially going to affect him long term in terms of legal with the law. And we quickly recognized it, and we all decided that it was best for him to come out and get a fresh, clean start. And there was actually a couple times that happened.
And I had told him, you stay there in the Bible Belt. In most states, all states at the time, you're going to go to jail or you're going to get killed.
Right.
Here, it was just legalized.
Right.
Sorry.
And we're talking about marijuana.
Yes.
Well, there was
other things too.
There was
but,
a few other things too.
But for the most part, we said that over and over and over.
Right.
But so I think at this time he was 17-ish, 17, 18. And so he came out and he was doing great. We were just thinking, okay, this is going well. And probably, I would say 3 to 5 months into school, he just started slipping. And it was things like not coming home when he was supposed to. Naturally, I'm a firm believer, it doesn't matter what situation, all kids need rules and they need structure. And that's how we raise the other two. So this kid is coming in with a totally different set of rules, and he didn't like it. I think that we're very cool, easygoing parents, in my opinion. We're not hardcore, but we do expect you to have a purpose in life.
Right.
And life is rules. So that it applies to everybody.
Right. And when you leave the home, everyone else is not going to be anywhere near as graceful as you.
Absolutely. So, and it's our job rather to form these children to be able to go out to society.
Right.
So, so it's always going to be challenging for sure in that scenario with any kid, I would think. But we did the best we could. But at some point, he just went awry and he would leave for weeks and we didn't know where he was.
Right.
So we would know that he was okay through his mother, though, because he was communicating with his mom. And naturally, that's her baby. And so it was a very tough situation. And what breaks my heart the most is for my husband, because he tried so hard to say, listen, let me make this up to you. I know that I did you wrong. I should not have left the state that you were in. But he also had legitimate reasons as well, and you can't discount those either.
No.
Regardless, he made the decision he did because he thought it was the right one at the time. And there was no grace given to Mark from his son. And at the same time, his son was going through something that was real too. And so the situation was just very sensitive.
Right. You being the stepmom, I'm sure.
You know, Jon Mark and I had a great relationship.
Right.
We really did. He was funny. You know, he was always very respectful towards me. He was never a brat. He honestly was never really a brat.
Right.
He wasn't.
Did you feel like, I've been a stepmom, and I know that when you come into a relationship with someone who has a child that's not quite a child, not quite an adult, and they've already formed their personalities, it's kind of hard to figure out where you fit in that position.
It's
right?
very true. It's very true. However, my bigger concern with knowing what was going on in Louisiana was how is that going to affect our children, right? So I remember we picked him up from the airport. It was late. All five of us rather went out to dinner, and I just had to get off my chest. I'm a very open book kind of person in terms of communication. So within that couple days, I took him to go get registered at school, and I remember pulling over in a neighborhood and just saying, okay, Jon Mark, I have to get this off my chest. This is my feelings. And I need to know that we're going to be okay. You know, that you're not going to bring into this household situations, because this is a direct result. You know, you're the bigger brother to the other two.
Right. Role model.
So he assured me that would not happen. And he said all the right things at the time. Fast forward 6 months-ish, 5 months-ish, he was just doing things that were out of his character, in my opinion, and not acceptable. Just certain things he would do or act in front of our other two kids. And so, again, I don't think he did it out of malice. He's not that kind of a human. I think he just didn't think about the consequences.
Right. And is he an only child with his mom too? So he had younger siblings?
He had a younger brother there in Louisiana. So, you know, a lot of dynamics there.
Yeah.
So he comes to your house, and he's the oldest brother. That must have been a lot of pressure for him to kind of fit into a expectation of, I mean, you know, regardless if you have spoke to him about that, to be the older brother in that situation.
They were much younger. Like 5+ years. And so, and he was rarely around. I mean, he would go to school and come home at 10 at night.
He was the apple of both of their eyes.
Yeah.
When Jon Mark was coming, it was like they were so excited. And, you know, it was just, they just put him on this pedestal.
When we got away and went on vacations, you know, they were all just peas in the pot. You know, when it was him at home around all his friends and, you know, probably, you know, under the influence, you know, then it was probably a different story.
Right.
So I think what they remember is, you know, the good times around him.
Right.
And, but he, you know, anyway.
And the other part of it, now thinking about it, I think that Mark and I weren't even sure how to react or how to discipline, because to be honest, our other two kids are very easy. They're easy, they mind, they're easy peasies. And Jon Mark was too, truly. Great kid. But there was those challenges that came into play, and I don't even think that we even knew how to handle it. And so at that point, he was 18, 19. And then...
Well, there's a lot of shakeup there, too. He comes to live with you all. There's a stable relationship there.
And he has to try to figure out how is he going to fit into this.
And the same for you guys. How does he fit into this dynamic of You're coming from, across the country. You're coming into a relationship as a child that's a functioning relationship where there's rules, there's discipline, there's love. And now it's like, how do I wedge my way into this relationship? And that's something that it has to be hard to navigate through. He's coming with scar tissue. Mm-hmm. He's coming with abuse. He's coming with a lack of love or whatever is going on there into this loving dynamic.
Or a lack of an example of
Yes,
what
absolutely.
Well, his
parents
mother,
together.
him and his mother have had a great, very close relationship.
You can't point any fingers at this
No,
point.
no.
You know,
Of
I
course,
mean,
of course.
obviously a big finger could be pointed at me because he had some underlying hatred toward me. And that started to come out toward the end. And luckily we had one or two good conversations before, the situation happened to him. And those are meaningful, but there was some underlying serious, hatred toward me for leaving his mother and leaving the state. So,
But we all know that only happens because someone's feeding the information negatively, right? And
well,
it's not.
regardless of where it come from, he was definitely fed information.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it was siblings or parents or grandparents or whoever, but he was definitely continually fed information.
Right.
And up until the very end, I was explaining to him the truth of the situations that from as little to, big things to as little as you put me in a closet for one of my rooms. And I'm like, no, it wasn't. It was a smaller room in the house, but it wasn't my house.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a closet. It was like a sewing room. It was a half size of a normal bedroom.
Right.
It was perfect.
And someone kept
for a
calling
kid
it a closet, right?
yeah. And so anyway, there was from little things to big things. Absolutely, it was fed, but again.
Well, I know this is a difficult piece, but walk us through what happened. We know that we lost Jon Mark. What transpired?
Well, I got a call Saturday morning at 8:00. We were traveling the night before, so we had slept in, and something that any parent would absolutely hate to hear, that Jon Mark had died. And
We got a call from his stepfather.
yeah, and
From Jon Mark's stepfather? Okay.
for 2 hours, you just wonder, why aren't you crying? Why aren't you crying? Why aren't you just?
You go through a shock.
In hindsight, absolutely, I was in shock because then it hit. But I just could not even, I could not even understand that was true, how it would be true, what that would mean if it was true. So I don't know, it felt like a couple hours, but it was probably 20 minutes or so.
Yeah.
And I was online booking a ticket to Louisiana last minute. And you want to know what torture is, going out in the public, flying on an airplane after losing your son within hours, because the rest of the world just keeps going.
Right.
Yeah. They don't know what's
and
going on.
your world is devastated.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I put on my shades and made it to Louisiana, and had found that he stayed out that night with a bunch of guys at a bar, and went over to a guy that he knew, a guy that they had canoed in the back bayou together with, played video games with, but the guy was younger than him. He was 17, and he was dealing drugs. And some people from New Orleans brought not only drugs up, but a gun up. And supposedly my son owed him $75, and he was texting on his phone the day before that he was going to get his money, and he had a gun. And the girl asked, does Jon Mark carry? No, he doesn't carry. So he knew he was unarmed, and he fight broke out, and he shot him twice in the back. Leaving the door, he was running out the door. So his feet were inside the house and the rest of his body were outside in the garage. Another kid was shot 4 times in the back in front of a car in the garage, in the carport, sorry. He survived somehow, and so that's what happened.
You get the call. It's in the morning. Both of you were there. How do you deal with that? And this is stepmom, and he has been a part of your life. He is in your life, and now the man that you love is experiencing something that, as a father, as a parent, the last thing you want to hear.
Yeah, your absolute worst nightmare of thinking about the trajectory of the way his life was going.
Now, where's your mental?
It's really difficult to even put yourself in that moment, because it's like just what you said. It's the absolute worst thing that could happen to a parent.
I'm sure you all looked at each other in just absolute disbelief.
I think that
right?
we just both kind of went into shock.
Yeah.
You just don't believe it. Yeah. It's just something you can't really, your mind you can't even grasp it. I think that I just didn't believe it. You just don't believe it.
I remember having the feeling of, wow, I'm that person. I'm the person that I never thought I would be. I'm the person who I feel sorry for when I hear other people's story. Now I have all the feels that I can imagine other people having. And it is just, it's a difficulty that you just can't describe.
Yeah. What I remember is, if I recall, I think when Mark answered the phone, he got the news and he just turned over and told me, and then he got up and went in the closet. And I think I just heard him like not cry, but not yell, but in the middle, just more of a sob. You just want that moment to end immediately.
Right.
And I don't know, your mind just goes into shock mode. And I just held my husband, and I think he was shaking, and he was just in shock, and you just go through that feeling for a long time.
And I'm sure you guys had conversations about, what did we do wrong, or what did we not do enough of?
I still ask myself that question often of, I just wish I would have done this. I wish I would have called him more.
And that's what's unfair, because he didn't deserve to die.
Right.
No.
And, you guys, you've been there. They didn't deserve to die.
Right.
You didn't deserve to go through what you went through. Just it's life. It's reality. It's what it is. And then comes all the what ifs and shoulda, woulda, couldas, and would have done different. And
you guys were married how long before this happened? You had just gotten married.
2 years, I think, year and a half, something like that.
And so you're basically newlyweds, and you're anticipating nothing but exciting moments in your families bonding and getting together and making memories. And I believe that the fact that you all were still learning each other and had such a admiration and respect for each other, that I would hope that part of your relationship assisted with the healing process, because that support was just, it was everything. I mean,
I think the hardest part for me is, I'm a fixer. That's just my personality. So
And that's not always a good thing because, I want to take those bad feelings away from him. I don't want him to feel that way. And and so I would naturally try to fix it somehow, but I can't. And he would get upset because he doesn't want to hear what I think he should do. He just wants me to listen. And so I have to purposely bite my tongue sometimes because it's not necessary for me to
Have the answer.
verbalize to him what I think.
Right.
He is suffering in a way that no one can understand unless you've been there.
And it changes by the moment, right?
does.
There may be a moment where you want to hear what she has to say, and then there's times where you just need to quiet to be what you're experiencing between the two of you.
Yeah, but Heather, you said a great thing, I believe. You said you just held him. And I believe that that action speaks louder than words. When you don't know what to do, when you don't know what to say, sometimes you just wrap your arms around someone
Yeah.
and just hold them. That speaks volumes. So that's,
You're right. I mean, just knowing that people care. I mean, because, people would say, I don't know what to say. There's nothing I can say, and so you hear that a lot. But just knowing that they care, it matters. Your friends,
Right.
That help you get through it, your family, and certainly a spouse that, it was hard on her too. It's hard on all of our family,
Now, you said you went out to, immediately you flew out. Were you alone when you went out?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We went out there
You know.
roughly a week later.
Funeral arrangements,
Kids, too.
literally the next day.
Yeah. A week
Doing
later. we
funeral
all went out.
arrangements, which you guys unfortunately know too well. The absurdity of picking out colors in caskets, and it's torture. It's mini
It is,
torture.
yes.
It's then a 2-year trial of the shooter where he was free the whole time, with out on bond, and violated his bond and still was allowed to walk free for 2 years.
This
It
was
was-
a kid too, right?
Yeah. Which at this time he's 19 and still getting caught doing cocaine, selling cocaine and still walking free. So it was agony. It was absolutely torture. And to sit in that courtroom and to watch the wheels of justice,
Yeah.
I don't want to get into it, but I guess in short, it's so much about the perpetrator and his life ahead of him, and him being rehabilitated, and he has to have a life, and he has to have a chance, and all these things you're watching for 2 weeks in a courtroom, and you can't say a word. It's torture, because my son didn't have a voice. My son doesn't have a life. My son doesn't get to grow
Right.
up. My son doesn't get to be rehabilitated and all those things. So,
Yeah.
that's a whole different podcast, interview, whatever. But it's tough. It's torture. And in the meantime, still, I will always have a little bit of light of this world taken.
Right.
And there's a little bit of light in your heart. There's a spot in your heart that will always be missing something until I see him again.
right.
At the hands of someone else who
It's the weirdest thing to, when you have a family unit, and in our case, it was a family of 5. It's really weird to go to a family of 4, even though we didn't have him full time and he was primarily under his mom's wing. We still were a family of 5.
Right.
And let me say also,
It's tough.
I do believe in forgiveness, and I have come to a place of forgiving and forgiving, and I never thought I'd be one of those people, to say something like this, because it's easy from that side to say what you would or wouldn't do,
Right.
but from the side of loss, this guy doesn't want forgiveness. He's soul as dark as can be. Maybe one day that'll change, and I pray for that to change. But I did, and I have. So I wanted to just clarify that I believe there's a difference between justice and forgiveness.
Right.
Forgiveness doesn't mean I go speak on his behalf to walk free.
Exactly.
There still has to be a price, or else it's each man, woman for themselves.
Exactly.
And what type of world would that be? And that's, again, a whole nother subject. But I do believe in justice. I do believe you need to be, the penalty needs to fit the crime.
Of course.
But I also believe in forgiveness.
So you talked about growing up religious. Is your religion and your faith, is that what has allowed you to get to this point? Is that what has allowed you both to stay strong in your relationship? Is that what helped you out?
You know, we've had friends, and I didn't know many atheist friends in the Bible Belt, but I would say I have a lot of friends that are not believers or of the faith that I believe in. And they've lost, we've got a relative, you know, that are not Christian, and they've had a kid, so they made it through it. I didn't think you could. I didn't think I could without my faith. So they've seemed to figure out and navigate it. But for me, I can only speak for me. Absolutely, my faith continues to help me get through it, to help me forgive myself, to help me, you know, forgive the perpetrator. And, you know, sometimes I can even smile thinking about him and say that, you know, I look forward to, thanks to my faith, what I believe is true, that I will be reunited with him. I only hope, for his sake, that it's a blink of an eye to him, whether it's 10 seconds and where time doesn't matter, or it's, you know, 40 years from me, or four years or 4 days. I just hope to him it's a blink of an eye. But I know he's in a better place. So absolutely, my faith has helped me so many ways. And if any listeners out there that have gone through losing a child want to learn more about that, they're free to contact you and can contact me.
That's right.
Because I do and have wanted to help others as I was helped, in a way that brings faith into that.
Yeah.
You know, I can tell you all the things that, but from my perspective, faith has helped.
A lot of people
Without
lose
it,
their
I
faith.
don't know who I would be right now, Lionel.
Yeah.
I really don't. I might have taken things into my own hands. I might have done something that would have affected me and my family for the rest. I don't know. But I do know that I believe that the vengeance is the Lord's and not mine. And so I try not to live with hate.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's,
I don't
that's
know.
amazing. Well, a lot of people lose their faith when something like this happens, and they get very angry with their faith,
Yes.
and they
That's true.
stop believing.
I think it was the experience, what people go through with their faith, you know, and how they're raised with it. And
Right.
I personally was not raised in a faithful household. I probably have different thoughts and opinions on it than my husband does. Thankfully, we both respect each other's thoughts. I would consider myself a faithful person, but not necessarily religious at all. But I can tell you that I do believe that it's the faith that does let my husband get up in the mornings and still enjoy life and still enjoy his children and his family.
You know, I mean, everything. But 1 minute, and I'm speaking to the choir, but maybe not. You know, you'll be eating something and you'll be like you'll hear a comedian. I mean, little things, and you're watching a TV program, and all of a sudden, you know, you have to get up and go to the restroom because you're about crying. You know, you don't deserve that, or that, you know, your son doesn't get to experience that. And it's just, I don't know. I've never lost a spouse, so I can't relate. I've lost a parent. I've lost friends. I've lost, you know, family. But losing a kid has just been
Incomprehensible.
incomprehensible. And any loss creeps up on you, you know. But this particular loss just it's you just you can't sometimes wrap your brain around,
The whys.
Right, right.
Well,
So young.
I want to ask, having gone through this, and it's been some years, and I'm sure there's been many things that you all have thought about, have spoken about. What advice, if any, that you can offer a parent, a couple that have gone through this, or that may be in the early stages? It might have just happened. What advice would you give to those parents that just lost a child?
For me, it's just, to me, it's faith-based, is draw nearer to God. There's times where I just don't even know how I made it through those, and I look back and, I can only, so I just believe that he helped me through it, and was there, and, spoke to me in my heart and my soul, and just said, some things. I journaled at the time. So I think for a couple, you just have to really circle the wagons around your family, and draw near to each other, be uplifting, be caring, know when to talk, know when to give advice, but also know when to, like Heather said, to just be there and listen. That's tough sometimes, but you get through it if you love and appreciate and respect each other. To me, some advice I would give in a different way is, if you haven't had a loss, and this is so cliche-ish, I've heard it, and I'm like, well, yeah, whatever. It's, and that cliche would be to realize what you have, right? Realize the moment. We all try to do that in our own way, but life goes fast, period. And we do enjoy these moments, and we can't even live our life with that understanding of what it would be like without them. Right. So it is what it is. But I would say, to me, one of the things that I may have mentioned to you before is that all the videos I have, you remember back in the day where we had the big shoulder camcorders? Yep. And we had the tapes.
Yes.
And we had hours and hours of us running around, in cloth diapers. Maybe I'm older than you. But,
no, Christmas, opening presents.
Christmas and all that. And, now it's all cell phone video. Yes. And so all I really have to look back are these 20-second or less clips. And it just gets to the point where, if you're capturing something funny. So now at birthday parties, I'll let the camera roll, and I'll get the in-between stuff, the comments, and probably still don't do a good enough job doing that. But, maybe you notice, maybe you haven't, but I'll kind of go around to people in the room, and I'll have them say something. And because sometimes when all you have is the funny moment, you don't have the in-between.
Yeah, the eye contact.
And everything's like Snapchat, short YouTube, whatever style, and it leaves you empty and wishing that you had spent more time capturing those moments. I mean, I don't want to look at a phone at all those moments anyway, but if I am going to record something, let it go for 2 or 3 minutes, and you'll, if nothing else, when you get older, you can look back at those and really appreciate them versus being left unfulfilled or wishing that, you just didn't get the little jig that he danced. You got before and after. I don't know. You know what I mean?
Yes, absolutely.
So that would be the biggest advice I would give, because, man, I just wish I had more substance recorded so that I could spend time hearing him and listening and seeing his expressions and just everything about him. And so, yeah, I don't know. Do you have anything?
Probably that, as hard as the moment is, that when you first learn of a death of your child, time, I don't want to say heals, but it makes it a little easier. And as much as in that moment you don't know how you're going to get through it, even as a stepmother that's gone through it, I still can't even wrap my head around it if it was Gavin.
Right.
And my initial thought was I would probably not want to be here. I think it might be a little easier if you have other children that you have to be there for. But I think my practical side to answer that would be that you have to acknowledge that that loss will always be there. That void will always be empty. It'll never be full again in that way. But the practical side says, you're here, you have a life, and life has so much joy, so much joy. And I truly, truly believe that most people are really good people. And so there's so much love to give and get. And so if they can get past the initial shock and the loss feeling, I can promise that person that it will get better and they will wake up one day and smile again.
Yeah. And you're honoring them by living.
Yes.
And continuing to find happiness and
Yes.
and keeping their memory alive, however you choose to do that. But
Yeah.
I believe that people who pass, I believe that if there's only one emotion that they can have, because all the other emotions require a human body, and love is the only thing they have when they pass, and they take that with them. Everything else stays here. And if they could want anything for you, it is that. And the only way to experience love is to live through it and open yourself up to it. And the moments, the joyful moments and the good memories, and to make new ones. And yeah,
It's so true. And I wish you could have met him, because he was that joyful person. You know, he was definitely, he was that person that walked in a room and you knew he was there in a good way.
I have a total idea in my head right now, him doing that jig dance, whatever it looks like to me.
Would it be okay at the end of the episode that you play a 10-second video of him?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
definitely. Well, Mark and Heather, we want to...
Can I add one more thing?
Yes, please.
My other advice would be, if you go through separation, and it's hard because people wrong people in all kinds of ways.
Yes.
I've been on both sides. And I just say lift the kids up. Don't get them involved, because if you teach that child that parent is wrong in any way, you're perpetuating pain and scar tissue.
And hate.
And hate. And you don't even know it. And maybe you do know it, or maybe you don't know it, but that kid will have it. And how they deal with it through the rest, what you're doing is you're perpetuating something that is painful for your kid.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, you just can't involve them. And, I think with my second marriage, I think we were good about that. And I think it shows, and Gavin, I think it shows that for the most part, you and your ex have been good about that. So I think that's a second piece that I wanted to add, not just of loss of a child, but a loss in a relationship, which I think half of our people out there, unfortunately, are going to probably deal with.
Right.
I mean, I hate the statistics, but it is what it is. And I think that's the thing is, if you allow that to, I just think regardless of how bad it gets, have a talk at the very least about leaving the kids out of it.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
don't burden the kids with having to heal from stuff they didn't know about.
It's going to go into their relationship.
Yes,
It's
it
going to
will.
go into their
It's not fair.
marriages.
Yeah,
It is.
you're
And you're
teaching
basically causing them 20, 30, 40, even 50 years later to have to deal with something that they shouldn't have had to deal with.
Right.
Exactly.
And we take
No,
for
no.
granted that these kids are not smarter than they are. They can form their own opinions about what kind of parent someone is by their actions. And they will eventually, because they will continue to grow and they'll figure it out. Let them do it on their own. It's the best, that's the best way. Only speak highly of your children's parents, you know, whatever the situation is.
Exactly. Well, I tell you, this conversation took a lot of courage, and we appreciate you both so much for coming in and sitting down and having this hard conversation. We're thankful that you guys have found the strength to continue to work together, continue to focus on your faith, and continue to love each other and your children through this. And really believe that this conversation is going to help someone who is out there who is feeling this exact same pain, who is going through it, or who may go through it. So thank you, Mark, Heather. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you.
Thank you for having us and having this amazing podcast.
Yeah, well, you guys have an inspiring story. It's, you know, relationships can be tough, but going through something like this is a test.
Well, you guys know that putting this together is to help someone, right?
Yeah.
Right, and that's all we can hope. So
That's it.
Yeah,
That's it.
thank you.
Thank you. And to all of you out there, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for listening to our conversation with Mark and Heather. We truly appreciate each and every one of you, and we hope that this touches someone. This is it for this episode of Couples Unfiltered. Please join us again next time as we discuss relationships, loss, and love with another couple. We explore their challenges and their triumphs. If you have an amazing love story that you would like to share, please reach out to us at couplesunfiltered333@gmail.com
Or couplesunfiltered.com.
You can follow us on Instagram. Please listen, like, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you again for joining us at Couples Unfiltered. Until next time.